Good afternoon, everyone. We've heard some very interesting speeches about predominantly how digital learning is disrupting the education of our children. And I think it's fantastically exciting what's happening in that market. I'm going to talk to you about the other side of the fence. We're in the corporate learning space, which is a more mature market. Digital has been involved in it in the last 15 to 20 years. And it's fair to say that the ramp up has been slower than one might have expected. But we're really enjoying some very interesting and profound effects on the way people learn in the workplace in the last few years. So let's have a look quickly at some stats first. As you would expect, in the more mature marketplaces of North America and Western Europe, the compound annual growth rates are relatively modest. However, they're pretty interesting elsewhere. The overall corporate learning market is worth about $220 to $250 billion, depending on which stats you look at. That's for every type of intervention, including face-to-face, of course. And digital is taking an ever-increasing proportion of that. One of the reasons for that, unsurprisingly, is the proliferation of mobile devices. We saw two things happen which were completely unintended events that conflated in about 2010-11. One was the reduction in face-to-face training courses that was caused by the recession, understandably, and the other one was the introduction of the iPad and then the whole invention of the tablet segment. And those two things caused, in that heavier regulatory and compliance environment, a lot more organizations to commute their learning to a digital medium. So, who are Learning Technologies Group and why did we create it? My chairman and I owned a private e-learning company called Epic. It was one of the European market leaders based in Brighton in the UK. And from 2008 to 2011, we turned it around. It had been a bit of difficulty. And then it started to grow quite profoundly. And we were approached by private equity every other day saying, get involved, become part of a consolidation play. And the reason consolidation is so relevant to our industry is that it's highly fragmented. We've got about 3,000, astonishingly, 3,000 e-learning companies in Europe alone. And so it is ripe for consolidation. And we decided not to go the private equity route. We decided to actually float the business on the AIM market in London. And we did that by reversing Epic into a cash shell in November 2013. Shortly after that, we acquired our largest competitor, Line Communications, to merge that with Epic and create our new business called Leo. And almost immediately after that, we bought a Games with Purpose business. You've heard quite a bit about games from the previous speakers, and I echo their sentiments and comments that games are going to be quite a profound effect in terms of how we learn going forward. So the business is well-financed, it's debt-free, and the reason we chose that we wanted to be public is that it gives us an opportunity to ask owner-founders to roll again and go on the journey with us. If they believe in what we're trying to achieve with LTG. And our forecast to the market is that we'll be a 50 million revenue and 20% EBITDA business by the end of 2017. So very quickly, a quick run through where we are now. We're by no means a finished business. This is unfinished work. But Leo is our engine room at the heart of the business. That delivers all of the consulting services and from where our corporate relationships and our relationships with major governments emanate. We're based in 3 sites in the UK and also in New York and Rio, about 250 people servicing these organizations. We deliver overall blended learning solutions. We don't sell generic content, the likes of which Skillsoft, you probably know, do. We also have an online authoring tool called Gomo. That's quite disruptive in that marketplace. Most of those are desktop installed. It's quite a mature market, but SaaS-based authoring tools that allow collaboration are an interesting development, and we're one of the leaders in that space. And as I mentioned, we also have Preloaded, which predominantly up until now was an educational games business, working with organizations like Amplify in North America. But more recently, we've taken on their skill set and taken that to our corporate client base. So our mission is all about moving learning to the heart of business strategy. We've wanted to for many years. We've always felt rather challenged that the aspect of learning has never got onto senior executives' agenda enough. And it's been a constant frustration for us, which we've seen diminish over the last couple of years. And I think the reason for that is that everything is happening faster to us. You know, it's more complex. The pace of change in our businesses is that much faster. And indeed, organizations are recognizing that unless they maintain and improve the competence and performance of their staff, they won't achieve what they want to with their business goals. Let me give you a couple of examples of where it's in real action. First of all, the NHS, you'll presumably all be aware that it's I think it's one of the largest national health services in the world, and it's the UK's public national health service. It wanted to change the way it delivered leadership and therefore change the culture to make it extraordinarily patient-focused. And so the first cohort was 10,000 participants. This is a program that's led by KPMG. There's a consortium of Harvard, Manchester University, and ourselves involved with a digital part of that program. And very excitingly, and in a very enlightened way with the NHS, they recognized from the very beginning that it should be built digital up. So unlike normal MBA programs, which are mainly classroom-based, this was inverted. We've put 10,000 participants through so far, and because they do a lot of the learning in the workplace, it makes it much easier to embed that learning into the workplace. And I'm delighted to see that we've been able to measure how effective that's been. A further 16,000 managers are about to be put through that program, and it's been phenomenally successful. On a completely other note, Jaguar Land Rover, who obviously have enjoyed a renaissance in the popularity of their products since being acquired by Tata in the mid-2000s, have an incredible challenge. They will produce more new vehicles in the next 5 years than they have done in their entire history. It's an extraordinary stat. And of course, the problem with that is you have to disseminate that product knowledge of ever more complex technology-oriented vehicles to many countries in many languages. And you can imagine that really the only way of consistently doing that is by digital and indeed by mobile devices mostly. They also have been very enlightened about the way they view induction and how they bring on board new inductees, because they believe, and they've been able to track this, that the effectiveness of the performance of an employee is directly correlated to how well they've been inducted. And we're involved in grabbing those new inductees from even before they start in a digital engagement program. So what's next for this market? We heard in the gaming session on the podium earlier that virtual reality headsets and the proliferation that's undoubtedly coming of those are going to have an effect. And I agree, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as profound as the effect mobile had on our market, for instance. But it is interesting to us, and we're looking very carefully at it. You imagine the opportunity, the safe opportunity to practice in a virtual reality scenario where you're perhaps managing a meltdown in a nuclear power station or something like that. And the one that we're most excited about, actually, is the assimilation of big data, and knowledge of what someone's doing, where they're doing it, and what they've already learned into something that we call contextualized performance support. This is where we can anticipate the person's learning need and deliver them a relevant, contextualized piece of learning just at the point that they need it, almost before they knew they needed it themselves. We're doing a lot of research into that, and there are some interesting developments on the way. So, summing up, Learning Technologies Group has been positioned, it is the only public company that's focused on a consolidation strategy within this rather fragmented digital learning market. We've made a couple of acquisitions already. We intend to make significant further acquisitions over the next 6 to 12 months. And I'm very interested in making sure that we are aligned with the digital market, because what's most curious to me is that learning has always lagged a little bit behind all the other digital trades. And I'd therefore be delighted to have conversations with any of you about the sort of innovations that you are exploring in this very exciting space at the moment. Thank you very much.